Welcome to today's episode of The Growth Zone. I am Christian Bartsch. What is the core benefit of listening to this show? Business leaders in corporate and privately held companies gain insights into trends and strategies that provide them with a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Each episode focuses on an area such as marketing, sales, innovation, or funding that is absolutely critical to the growth of companies, whether they are startups or corporate global players, where management needs to juggle the challenges of market entry or knowing how to navigate the uncertainties of disruptive developments. Mind feeding is where clarity evolves and helps solving organizational challenges. For those who listen to the entire episode, I have a special surprise gift. I am working on some great guests that are industry leaders in management, innovation, and marketing. Let's get started on today's episode. In today's episode, we are going to look into what's happening in this crazy world. So many workers find themselves stuck in their home office, battling with assignments, family, and doubt. My guest today is JJ Caffey from Frisco. But before we start, who is JJ Caffey? She is an entrepreneur specializing in the future of work. As founder and CEO of Order In, a private membership club for the leaders of remote work, JJ is building a better workday by researching, studying, and evolving the future of the office and work environment. So I've got today with me JJ Caffey from San Francisco. And JJ, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, Christian. So I am the founder and CEO of Order In, and Order In is a digital membership club for the young leaders of remote work. For us, that's everyone, working remotely right now, which that in itself is almost everyone, from Gen Z and millennials especially, although we don't discriminate, who are working on exciting things and who are really kind of top of their game. And I founded that company to help with really two problems that we see facing most people who are knowledge workers right now, anyone who, like me, works in front of a screen or in front of a computer all day. The first one being a sense of loneliness and isolation, especially during the coronavirus pandemic, but even before that. And then the other one is just an issue with how everyone is structuring their workday, structuring their time, the expectations that most corporate environments have for your workday, so that people end up getting very burned out and working just very long hours and maybe not with optimal productivity. So we're helping our members with those two issues. And a bit more about me and why I started this. I have been involved in entrepreneurship and the future of work, which is kind of our category, for quite some time. I've been working on this company for the past year. Prior to that, I finished my MBA at the Wharton School. And before that, I was working at incubators and accelerators for startups. And I was also the first employee of an artificial intelligence software company. So through all of that, a focus for me has kind of been the way that we work and how it can be improved. When I was working out of accelerators, when our little software company that is doing wonderfully well now, but we were, tiny to start out with, we worked out of different co-working spaces. And I always kind of kept an eye on what about our surroundings is impacting the way we work and whether we're satisfied with our day, whether we're getting enough done, and frankly, whether I myself or anyone else gets to go home at a decent time at the end of the day. During that time, I was living in New York City prior to starting my MBA. I founded an organization called Valkyrie Collective, which aimed to provide support to other female entrepreneurs. And I was very lucky that that took off across a few different cities. And then during my MBA at Wharton, I also got involved in venture capital. I co-founded an organization called Venture Foragers with my fantastic co-founder, Arif Damji, and we did venture capital research and deal sourcing for the top venture capital firms on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States, particularly in the Bay Area, particularly looking at emerging and kind of frontier out there sci-fi types of technology. And so that's been enormously rewarding as well. And then again, during that process, I really kept an eye on, you know, how are people doing when they're working? And so that's what really drew me to what I'm working on now is just consistently observing these two problems and finally deciding, you know what, I'm going to try and do something about it.
That's awesome because when you think of it, entrepreneurs, especially those who are working freelancers or traveling a lot, they're used to working a lot independently. And sometimes when you see as well in corporates and so on, and you see the ones who have to sort of work in teams, and you have the people who are more independent workers, and they have their goals, they can focus, organize themselves, but the others are not used to that, actually working on their own in a way that they have to be self-sustainable. If they can't just go and reach to the next desk and ask the other person, if you're not next door and everybody is scattered around the countryside or city in pandemic times or anything like that, then things become more difficult. And of course, our normal lives go and intervene with us and our schedules because we have kids, we
Yeah.
have spouse, and so on. We have neighbors that maybe complain if you're doing your stuff at night, or kids are complaining next door because they can't fall asleep because the dad is being too loud when he's doing his phone calls or other kind of stuff and so on. And you notice, oh, this doesn't work. You have to do it differently. And that puts, of course, pressure on people. And not only that, from my own experience from employees and that, sometimes, of course, in situations like these, there's a stress as well in the families of your employees. So you have to handle them somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to take the time and listen to them and give them some good, let's say, friendly advice and give them some wisdom so that they feel not totally left there on their own and trying to somehow handle this thing. You've got, of course, your own stuff to handle, but you maybe have as well somebody else to bounce an idea off. And that's something they have to learn. They have to learn to do that. So for today's topic, we had agreed on looking on all these things that have to do with that. And so how can you be more productive while working from home without the isolation discomfort that we seem to be experiencing in many, many locations around the world?
Yeah, well, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think you make such a great point. You're absolutely right that entrepreneurship and working independently is a lonely experience. It's a lonely road, and we've been dealing with that. I think those of us who are founders, or my many friends who are freelancers, for a very long time. And now everyone is in that same position. So that is the challenge. I think that when it comes down to productivity, it of course depends on the individual. But what we've built at Order In is really based on the little bit of behavioral economics that I learned in Wharton. And I am not an expert in behavioral economics. I wish I were, but I'm lucky to consult with some experts on this issue. And the core question really is, how can we be realistic about what impacts a person's day, about what impacts their behaviors, especially when it comes to something like productivity? There's a lot of fantastic theory out there about productivity and a lot of, very sort of abstract concepts about how to be productive in your day. And maybe a lot of people think they just need to try harder, they need to focus more, they need to have perfect personal discipline. And I like to take a step back and say, okay, realistically, and this is why it's so individual and why we deal with this on an individual basis with our members. But realistically, what is your day like? What are the pressures on you? What are your own habits, whether you like your habits or not? Really, what are they? And what impacts the decisions that you make? So, for instance, one of my best pieces of advice that I can give to anyone, and it's something that we work with our members on and try to provide for them is to have some kind of external accountability with someone who ideally you feel a sense of support with that person. I mean, I think you made a great point about, we want to offer support to our own employees, especially, and make people feel seen. But maybe this person isn't even your boss or your colleague. Ideally, they're probably not someone in your family who you can be honest with about how your day is going and help you work through those more difficult moments and have that accountability. And the reason that I don't recommend someone from your own working team or someone from your own family is you want kind of a friend, honestly, is the perfect person. You want this balance of someone who's going to care about you and want you to be happy and wish you well, but who maybe doesn't have their own personal stake in what you tell them. So, for instance, if I'm having a difficult day, I'm not feeling very productive. I have a wonderful team. We're about 8 people right now. I could go to someone who's my own employee as CEO and I could say, hey, Christina, I'm having a hard day. I'm not getting anything done, but it's sort of not perfect for me to say that to her because I'm her boss. And that's just going to put unnecessary stress on her because my ability to be productive impacts her. Similarly, I have a wonderful partner, my fiance, Tyler. I do. I mean, I'll be honest. I absolutely tell him what's going on in my day. But if I tell him, hey, I'm going to have to work late because I'm doing this and that, or I'm having trouble with productivity, he cares for his own personal reasons, whether or not I'm working late versus I can be finished with the day and have dinner, and so that perfect person is someone who cares about you, a friend. For us in Order In, it's a member of the community that we call an accountability buddy, which is so cheesy, accountability buddy, but that's what we call it. Um, and the research behind this shows that if you tell someone else that you're going to do something, your likelihood of actually achieving what you said you're going to do increases by 95%. So that's actually my best advice for productivity is to, tell other people what you're doing and have people who can support you so that you're not just facing it completely alone.
Yeah, that's actually quite a good point because when you think of it, at least from my experience, is always having somebody who, for instance, let's say, who more or less understands as well what you're doing.
Mhm.
Let's, as an example, for instance, somebody who, if you're an entrepreneur, somebody who's as well is an entrepreneur as well, and you maybe sometimes bounce from each other as well ideas, or let's
Absolutely.
say the other one has some new idea, but
Mhm.
or has found something, but can't maybe handle the technical stuff, and you're more a technical person, then you can go and say, "Oh, that's interesting. I'll have a look at it," and you come back and say, "Oh, that's actually quite good, but we'd have to use something this and this, but how can we do it?" Then the other one maybe bounces something again. And so it can be all sorts of things, whether one finds something or the other one has a problem to deal with or a problematic client or whatever, and thinks, I should do this, but I don't know. I'm going all sorts of directions. And then one just gives and says, hey, go, okay, write this and doing that. And good. Because you're so involved in it, you messed up in your brain. And that works quite well. You can support the other one as well. When the other one says, I'm not sure whether I can actually pitch this big potential lead because I think I'm too small, I'm not that important, or I haven't got that much experience and so on. You give them certain advice and then it helps them as well. So it's not just you just going there and getting something, but actually as well,
Exactly.
sometimes you swapping the sides and the other one maybe sometimes needs help or you need help for something. The other person helps you and the next in the same conversation, the other person comes with his problem where he needs advice. And in the end, it's a ping pong game and both benefit from it. And it's just not
Exactly.
one person calling all the time and asking for help. And then when he never listens to me, I have as well problems and I need something. No, that's a nice thing because that really builds connection and value. And when you think of it, all this discomfort that we're experiencing, whether it's lockdowns or people have uncertainty, whether they're still going to have their jobs or whether they're, even if they're entrepreneurs, freelancers, are they still going to have a contract? Is the company going to cut costs and so
Mhm.
on? All these things that
A
go in
lot
the
of
mind of
fears.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So we've definitely seen these impacts and that it's more difficult. I loved your point, by the way, about a friend who's, maybe also an entrepreneur. And I think the most important piece in that is that it's a peer. I think that's kind of the piece that you identified that I really agree with. It's a peer and you can be mutual. Another thing that we have research on actually on that is that if you help someone else with something or give them the advice, this is actually called advocacy bias in behavioral economics.
Hmm.
If I give you advice, I think you should try this restaurant, I think you should watch this movie, is some obvious ones because you've probably already done that, but maybe even like, hey, make sure that you call your grandma, make sure that you check in with your family. Whatever advice you give someone, it makes you more likely to do it yourself, to do the same thing that you told them to do, because you don't want to be a hypocrite, basically. So we've seen that having that mutuality and that helping other people is the perfect situation. But to your point of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
What?
Oh, I thought you were saying something.
Well, just as you said as well, with the point with entrepreneur, it's a peer. It's definitely because it can be a manager to manager, technician to technician, programmer to programmer, database expert to database expert, or whatever, IT to IT, or to accountants, or
Mhm.
anything, or to audit managers, or whatever, to doctors, to dentists, yeah,
Perfect.
to dog trainers. It doesn't matter. You can help each other because nobody knows everything 100% and has a magic wisdom that just goes and says boom and it's done. um, we need sometimes as well just to bounce it off from
Absolutely.
somebody else. Mm.
And to your point about kind of the fears that people are experiencing
Mm.
and the difficulties, not knowing, if they're going to continue to have a job maybe, or, being kind of trapped and feeling that. Um, my statistics, I have to be honest, are based on the US. I know you have a wonderful international audience, so shout out to everyone around the world who's listening, but I think that it's going to be reasonably consistent. What we've seen here in the US is that people working from home right now, 53% of people are feeling more lonely than they were before. And this is particularly pronounced with millennials and Gen Z. For millennials, it's about 71%. For Gen Z, it's 74%. So the youngest people are having the hardest time with feeling lonely. And then in terms of the stress levels, 69% of people feel burnt out. They feel like their stress level has gotten too high to the point where they just have all of these anxieties and it's just preventing them from doing their day-to-day life the way that they want to be doing it. So it's definitely a little more challenging right now than it even usually is to kind of be in this position.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see a thing as well through all generations, even people who are pensioners and so on. They themselves as well get their anxieties, the stress. Okay, can I go out somewhere? Is it safe? Are my family relations going to be sensible, or are they going to go partying? And then someone is going to be sick, and eventually the whole family is sick. And yeah, and whatever next comes, you don't even want to mention because it's more than unfortunate. Or you have the different ideas that you're thinking, oh, well, yeah, I need to move. Which was actually an interesting conversation today. And actually, we actually recognized that we all more or less put some weight on during the lockdown. And it's
I
funny,
know I did. I
you
know
know,
I did, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, and you go in the weight and you think, that's not muscle, definitely not muscle that added.
It
Yeah,
sure is not. No, I'm at home, very close to my fridge and my stove all day long.
yeah,
And I'm
definitely,
walking less. I used
and
to walk, so much every day, and now
yeah, and we used to go to the gym and so on. And the thing is, I grew up um, in a family that's multicultural, with taste from the UK and taste from Germany, and then as well, of course, South America, Spain, and USA,
oh,
and so on.
wonderful.
So I'm, of course, someone who's very much into biscuits, and that's a problem, of course.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I'm still
that's the
envious.
thing.
I would
Yeah,
still
the only
love
thing
to
is,
have the food, that's great.
Yeah. The only thing is, when I was 2 years ago, was in Canada for I think over a week, consulting a client. They kept filling me up with Canada Dry ginger ale because they knew that I like ginger ale. And
I love
after a while, I said, "Hey, I want to drink something different. I love that, but I need a change. I can't drink ginger ale from morning to evening."
mhm. Oh, that's wonderful. I have it in my
Yeah.
fridge right now. I have, this is such an American thing, I think, but I have the diet ginger ale, the no sugar
Yeah.
version, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm allergic to the to diet drinks. That's a
Probably
problem.
it's probably okay. They're not actually good for you either, so
Yeah, but yeah, normal ones. Anyway, if you don't overdo it, it's better than too much. Because of course, if you've got the sugar-free stuff, it invites you to take more of it.
certainly true.
But the same thing as if you like cappuccinos and espressos and so on, you'll add your sugar, you'll have your cup of tea, add the sugar, and then suddenly, whoom, you notice, I can't fit in there, or it's somehow this or that. And then you notice, okay, you have to find a way. And of course, situations like this have led as well to many sports centers as well, not just to close the doors, but go out of business permanently.
Yeah,
And
it's concerning.
yeah, and that's something when you see, okay, what can I do? What can I do? And one of the things, of course, what I usually do is when the weather is nice, I go then in the evening, go for a little jog around. That's still better. And it's actually good for your body as well in the evening. Some people prefer in the morning. That's nice as well. But what I like about the evening, it's quiet. And you can walk around, even if you're walking around, your mind calms down, and it's really, really good. And that's the thing that we need in times of isolation and so on. You sometimes just need to go out, get that fresh air,
Absolutely.
and mix it as well, of course, with conversations as well,
Mhm.
with friends, call people, and whether it's on Messenger or phone, whatever.
That's funny because one of my personal biggest challenges in my workday, I don't like to change what I'm doing. So when in the
Mm.
morning when I'm, reading the news and I'm having my breakfast, I don't really like to get started on working and stop what I was doing. And then at the end of the day, it's even harder. Once I'm working, I don't like to stop working at a decent time. So whatever I'm doing, I want to just keep doing it. It seems is my quirk. So, personally, one of the things that I really try to do to end my workday is to go outside. We don't have the commute we used to have. And I don't know about you, but I'm happy that I don't have to travel to the office or spend 40 minutes in the car to get somewhere. But there's still that ritual element. It used to be when you're finished with your day, if you're working in an office, you you leave, you physically leave, and then you arrive somewhere else, and it resets the way that your mind is relating to the day that you're having. Okay, previously I was in working mode, and now I'm in, family mode. I'm at home, I'm doing something for myself. And I think the worst thing that we're seeing, and again, this is kind of a US statistic, but we're seeing the workday get longer by 2 to 3 hours by some sources, or 10 to 15% is actually the global source. That, pretty much in the US and Europe and Asia, you're seeing about a 15% increase in the hours that people are working. And I think the worst thing is when you're doing a little bit of work from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep without creating that separation between your working time and your personal time. So I love your evening walk and your evening jog because it's something I absolutely do. I try to decide, okay, I am finished for the day. I'm done, and I'm going to go outside. I'm going to walk around for a while, and even though I'm not leaving a place and going to a different place, at least I'm leaving a place, even though I'm arriving back to the same place I was working all day. I try to pretend it's a little bit, okay, now it's not my office, now it's my house.
Yeah, although sometimes that doesn't quite work with me. Sometimes I have an idea and it just goes
Mhm.
crazy. And I'm listening I've sent some messages to one of my employees, and we're practically strategizing about this crazy business idea.
Perfect
And I'm
though.
listening to some music, walking for a while. And then afterwards, I've got so many ideas that I've been thinking through, talking it through whilst listening to the music. And then eventually I sent a lot of information to my, um, business partners and so on. And then it's crazy. Once I had an appointment with, I think, what was it? Was it one of my birthdays? We went and bought an espresso machine, and we'd been trying different kinds of Nespresso coffee taps and that. And I think in the end, I drank, I think, 6 espressos, and
Oh no.
I couldn't sleep. And at 3 in the morning, I sent a whole bunch of emails to my lawyer, with who I had an appointment the next day. And he said, I thought this was a bit crazy at 3 in the morning. You're sending me messages. But then he, of course, what does he do? He goes and puts in front of me a coffee mug
Oh,
with
Bert.
coffee.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's so
That was fun.
So
Yeah,
it's all about what works for you, right? For the individual, and
exactly.
everyone's going to be different because you make such an important point, actually, that in order to have these wonderful, creative, and exciting ideas, you have to give your mind space to relax and to actually have that time. Taking a walk is sometimes the perfect time to come up with new ideas. And it's hard to have a really good, really great creative idea if you're staring at your email inbox and hitting refresh on it, right?
Exactly. And you need to have a structure. Like, for instance, in the mornings, I have a certain time where I just do mind feeding, which means I read a book on business, or I'm researching something or anything, or listening to some podcast, audiobook, or whatever,
Mhm.
which is good. Audiobooks as well in the evenings are good if you're tired, because if you're tired and try to read a proper book, I fall asleep.
That's fantastic. So and I agree. So part of something we do at Order In is actually helping our members create their own morning routine that works best for them. And it's very individual. I don't know if I should announce this to the whole world because I feel like there's a lot of judgment, but I am not a morning person. I am not usually really ready to go first thing in the morning. It's not my physical body's best time. I kind of like you with your night jogs, actually, as well. I come up with good ideas at night. So it's about, what works for you best as an individual, but that's a really important element that ideally someone's morning is going to include that mind feeding. I think that's such a great term for it. That's not a term we use, but I love that. This idea that you can take in some external information and inspiration to process, as well as do the other things that help you kind of get set up for your day. One of my favorite things that we do in the morning, we have this like morning motivation session, and it's only like 15 minutes long. Everyone signs on to just see each other's faces and get excited, get our energy going to start the day, and it kind of keeps you honest to make sure you start at a decent time and know what you want to focus on first. But I think having that good time in the morning is so helpful. Your coffee story cracked me up. It's off topic, but I had a boss of mine. She was actually my boss at the software company and one of my personal heroes. She's wonderful. And she was given an espresso machine for a wedding present. And she eventually drank too much coffee that she didn't want to have it at her house. So she brought it to the office. So I went to the Nespresso store and I bought all the pods for decaf and then all the pods for regular. And so then there was a day that I had 6 coffees, but I thought that they were all decaf, and I started to feel sick at the end of the day. I was dizzy, like my heart was racing, I felt really strange. And I went to my boss and I said, I think I'm getting sick. I might have to go home. I'm just not feeling good. And she said, "Yeah, you drank, 6 espresso coffees." And I thought, okay, well, they're decaf. And she told me, no, they're not. You drank like 6 really strong coffees. So I think it's a danger for all of us. But you made such an interesting point about then emailing your lawyer at 3 in the morning. From that, I have a tool, you might like it. There's a bunch of them out there, but I have a tool I use called Yesware, and it's an email integration tool. And it lets me schedule that email. So if I'm really awake at 3 in the morning because I had 6 coffees and I want to send someone an email, I can use this tool so that even though I send it at 3, they're going to receive it at 7 or at 8. They're going to receive it at a normal time so that they don't know what I was up to. But also, again, for kind of the working culture that we're trying to create, I think with your lawyer, it's fine. But I try to make a point that I'm not going to email my own employees, late at night because I don't want them to feel the stress. Okay, like, the CEO sent me an email. I was supposed to have dinner with my family, but I'd better write back. So I actually try to schedule them so that they get it during working hours, even if that's not when I send it.
That's a good one. Good idea to use that. Yeah, with us it's usually just because we have people in all different locations, different countries. It's
Mhm.
you can't always perfect. And if I'm somewhere, like for instance, 2 weeks ago I was in Turkey, I was a different time zone, and even that, if that's just 2 hours or 3 hours difference, it makes a difference. And
Oh, it sure does.
the same thing when I send emails to my business partners in Florida or in Toronto, Ottawa, and that. And of course, it's different time schedules and that. I use, for instance, Time Buddy, which is as well nice because you see, okay, what time are they going to be? Even for my podcast release, I've got here a little sheet. I've got for different platforms, I've got my local time and the time where that usually would be posted and shared, and it helps a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's a funny thing sometimes. We think, okay, this country or this in this place is in this time zone. Actually, it's a
Mhm.
different one. Just look even Australia. Australia has like I think 3 or 4 time zones.
Yeah.
It's huge, and the US is similar.
Well, that's one of the things that when I was working on more of the venture capital side and what we're looking at with the research firm there, um, I think that asynchronous communication tools, I think that the opportunity there is really powerful. It's not exactly what I'm working on, although we do have an aspect of that asynchronous communication. But as remote teams and distributed teams become more and more common, being able to, figure out not just, I love the idea of Time Buddy, actually, I might get that. But not just figuring out what time it is for people, but maybe we get to a point where we don't care. The nature of the workflow changes that you're not expecting someone to respond right away. Maybe it's not all about scheduling a meeting that you're on the phone at the same time and figuring out a new way that it can be, whenever they are awake and they can deal with it. I haven't got the solution to that personally. I don't know yet. We had teams at the beginning of the pandemic. Two members of my team were living in the US, but they were from China and New Zealand. And so they moved back to China and New Zealand because they had to. And it was very difficult to figure out how to schedule, to ever talk to people who are in a very different time zone. So I'm looking for the solution for that still, I'll be honest.
Yeah, well, for that I'm using Schedule Once that helps. That what we used as well to schedule this recording, which is actually quite helpful because it we have in our own system we have a mail server that has as well integrated calendar and everything and scheduling. We can use that as well, but that's usually if we have something like that where they are outside of that system, then they can use Schedule Once because it's of course easier. Not everybody has then direct access to my calendar,
Mhm.
but with Schedule Once they can just easily book a quick appointment and they know, okay, what's the time, and automatically knows their time schedule and that time difference, which is a good thing. And on the other hand, as you said as well, people get a certain discomfort, of course, if they're alone and if they're trying to get somebody, maybe get contact of somebody that they need. Let's say it's somebody who's doing marketing and he needs a designer, and the designer is a different time zone, it's a different city. And even if they're in the same time zone, one of the key things I think why the people are needing, or let's say working longer hours, is actually because maybe they even notice themselves that they're unproductive or to several reasons. One thing, for instance, they have children at home, they have to suddenly do homeschooling. Or the school is maybe instead of 5 hours, it's maybe just 2 hours. So they have to go and pick up the kid again. And this and this, they waste a lot of time. And eventually they notice, okay, I have to start, I'd have to do my work later, or the child comes in and interrupts them.
Mhm.
They are totally out of the train of thought, and then it takes longer. I know for me, when I was doing projects before in a corporation, when people disturbed me, when I was doing strategic stuff, it took me at least half an hour to get back into the detail, especially when I was programming stuff. The programmer, he's out of the thread for at least half an hour until he finds again, where was I? What's the place where I was coding? What was the idea? I think, what was I actually trying to figure out? What had I found out as a possible solution? Was testing. And if they've changed some code and they're thrown out of that thought, they don't notice that something is broken then, newly broken in the code, and they're going to create a huge problem and have to search. And that's a productivity problem. And then where we have to maybe even try to say, okay, people need to have a time in the day where they're not interrupted by everybody else. And I don't mean the family, but I mean by all colleagues, by the managers, the bosses, clients, and so on. It has to be a time when there can be 100% focused on the work. And
Well, I completely agree with that. Actually, I think that's such an important point, and it's funny you bring it up. So, the research that we have shows that the average information professional, and this really speaks to your experience and the kind of complaint that you had with your colleagues. I wonder if this was true for you. The average person only gets usually in a day 28 minutes that they go without being interrupted, that they get to completely not get interrupted. I mean, so the number of interruptions is so frequent. And that's something that I so deeply agree with you about, and that we do also work on with Order In. We host pretty much every day something that we're calling, deep work sessions. I think we need a cuter name for it. My creative director might have a better name for it, but they're deep focus sessions where you're actually setting aside a few hours, and you do sign in to the meeting while it's happening, but you're not interacting with the other people. It's again to kind of create that external support and accountability. That the idea is, anything that's not related to what you're working on should not even be in the same room with you. Maybe your phone shouldn't even be in the room with you. You clear off your desk ahead of time. You take out everything you need for your project. So if you need certain documents, you open them up before you start. Everything else you have to close. You don't go on your email, and you really have that time to do that deeply focused work without anyone interrupting you. And there's a few quirks to this, a few little details of it. One is that, why would you want to sign into a meeting with other people if you're looking to do deep focus? And I think the real reason for that is the temptation element. For me, sometimes I have the temptation, if I want this deep working time, that, if someone needs me, if someone reaches out to me, I'm saying, okay, well, I was going to do 3 hours right now, but first let me talk to so and then I'll do 3 hours after that. And so what scheduling it with other people does is provides that external accountability that you kind of have to do it right then, because that's when it's happening. So you're doing it or you're not, and it's kind of creating that force function. And then the other interesting piece of this, though, that you brought up with your colleagues and your family, we can't, I wish I could, but we can't magically force everyone in your life, if you're our member, to leave you alone for 3 hours. So something that I think is important in working culture now, and that I hope to emphasize to any managers of teams who are listening, any other entrepreneurs and founders and people who have their own employees, is creating an environment where it's an expectation, where it's normal for someone to say, hey, I need this uninterrupted time. And hopefully that the people around them can respect that and can leave that time alone on their calendar. And similarly, I tell my own family, okay, you can't call me for 3 hours. If you need something, if you want to ask me, what are we going to do for lunch? This isn't the time. Like, you have to leave me alone for a few hours. So I think those interpersonal negotiations can be challenging, but it's so important to be able to do. And the impact it has is huge. We've had people say that they got more done, in that 3 hour period of time than they normally get done in 3 days.
exactly, and that's the thing. For instance, I've got here on my door, I have these signs you've got in the hotels.
I,
You can
I
hang them and
have
say,
I stole it from the hotel. I have it. Yes.
I didn't. I made my own. Because I wanted to take it from one hotel and then I forgot it. And then eventually I decided, I just do it myself. I took the cardboard back of one of my blocks, my notepads, and cut it out, marked everything on it, and then hang it in the door always.
Mhm.
Yeah, because my daughter eventually had similar thing where she has something where she can hang it on the door, and it's a sign that she wants to have her peace. She needs some time out to handle something that maybe is stressing her or something else. And that's a good way as well, just to say, okay, I need peace. Because that's the thing, if you close the door, okay, it's usually okay, you want to have your peace, but you don't know. In winter or so, maybe it's just you want to keep the heat in.
Yeah.
Instead of getting it out, or you just want to be working,
You just want it
focused, but
quiet.
it doesn't mean
Yeah.
exactly. But
Right
you
now
don't
it's
want.
more
It's
quiet.
no problem if somebody comes in. And yeah, another thing is what I usually do is, and that I've told as well other people when they ask me how they can handle this. Usually, when you have your phone, your iPhone or whatever on the desk, upwards, it usually over the day you get all these pop-ups with Facebook, Messenger, email, blah, 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 and so on. The whole thing pops up, a new news broadcast and so on. I usually, when I'm working focused, I have it on quiet and I turn the screen facing downwards.
Yeah.
And it's a huge difference. So it's there. If I need something, I can straight away access it, but it's not actually distracting me. And all these distractions, as you said, when so much being distracted, it uses a lot of our mental energy and exhausts us. And that then really creates then real stress in the mind of the person. And that's why I think as well that it's important that the people have the focus time, at least 1 hour, at least focused working, and then dedicating. I say, okay, from this to this time, I'm going to do all my calls, or this and this time I'm online to exchange information and so on. And that's the good thing we have. For instance, with our system, since we are completely remote nowadays, everyone has on their phone an app for our phone system, and I can even use it to chat with my employees, which is cool. And we can even do group chats, video chats, and so on. Or I can call somebody, and I've got their whole phone direction. And I see if somebody's then locked themselves out, so that they have peace. It's marked in red, and then
That's great.
Okay. We don't disturb the other person, because it's no point if you call a programmer whilst he's programming and then he's out of it, the whole thing. Or somebody who's doing some really good marketing copy and then they're thrown out of it and say, now I lost my thread. I don't know. It was so good and now I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I wish every organization had that, honestly. And I think it's about the culture that you said. It's about creating that culture where we respect that people need their time to focus. I think the challenge can come for people who are maybe, you're the employee of another company and that's not normal at your company. And so the question is, how do you bring it up and how do you create that environment? Or even, your family likes your hotel sign, but how do you talk to a family who's not used to the hotel sign and make sure that no one's feelings are hurt, that you want to be left alone? And I think my best advice really on that is to try to have a lot of empathy and awareness for the person who you're making this request from. I think it's easy to feel frustrated about interruptions and to feel annoyed and to feel like, okay, this is supposed to be my focus time. Why are you bothering me? And I think that if you can have empathy for what the other person's priorities are and what they care about as well, whether it's your boss or it's your family, that you can come together and try to create a win-win situation. Okay, maybe you feel like you need to be able to contact me and you want to make sure that this and that is happening if you're my boss. Making sure that I can find a way to meet all of your priorities and really emphasizing the benefits of having that focused time to yourself. Maybe even with a specific project, rather than saying abstractly, hey, I want, this many hours every day where no one bothers me. Maybe instead you say, like, I'm working on this project that I know is important to you. And so I think tomorrow I'm going to take this time to this time to really focus on it and just try not to let myself get distracted. And I'd appreciate your support. What do you think? Make sure that you understand their priorities. And similarly with my family, it's kind of the same thing. If the question is that they just miss you or that they have questions, maybe there's a way to compromise and make sure you get that time.
Yeah, and with kids, you can always do an arrangement. I need to have 2 hours focus work, and afterwards can go and, for instance, go into the garden, into the park, and play some balls and other kind of games. And of course, they get the reward for letting you work. It's the same thing like when you're teaching a dog to bring you the newspaper or something. If he knows that he's getting some goodie, he'll do it. Or when he knows, okay, he isn't supposed to bark when somebody's knocking at the door, and he knows, okay, if I don't bark, I get the goodie, then it's good. Because each time, for instance, I saw recently a video, I think it was a UPS driver. He has so many dogs, friends around. All the dogs, they come and they see that he's coming. They all sit next to each other waiting, and everyone gets from them a cookie. And instead of being the person who they are going to run after and try to bite, instead they know that he's a good person. And it's a positive thing, and they're happy. And then he can go about his deliveries, and he has no stress, and it's totally comfortable. And the neighborhood isn't disturbed by dogs going crazy. And it's so cute. I think I saw that I think it was on Twitter or somewhere. I saw that. And it was really so nice because you saw all the different kinds of dogs, small and big dogs, everybody just sitting next to each other waiting for the cookie.
That's great. Well, I think it sounds like it's all about compromise and about creating a win-win situation, even if you have to compromise with the neighborhood, pets. That's very funny.
Yeah, it's like a deal in the end, because somebody is giving something and in return gets something in the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if the one just is happy with getting his cookie and then doesn't bark, it's good. And the same thing like this employee who needs some peace of mind to get some stuff done. Then he's productive, he's faster, he's finished his work faster, less problems, errors, and other stuff. And the kid gets more attention as well at the same time, and is less stress as well. So the whole family has less stress, less arguments between the adults and so on, and it's a good way to handle that as well. But
I completely agree.
Sometimes we have to take them. Yeah. So it was great having you here on the show, JJ, and I'm sure in future we'll be talking about similar topics as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
If people want to get in contact with you, how can they reach you?
Absolutely. So again, I'm the CEO of Order In. Online, our website is orderinclub.com, and it's the same thing for our social media, our Instagram, Order In Club. And we, again, are a membership club helping the top tier, young professionals working remotely today have a more satisfying workday experience, get more done, make new friends, and feel less lonely. And my message to everyone is right now, if you are feeling lonely, isolated, or frustrated with your workday, you are in the majority. What we've really seen, the majority of people feel that way. So I hope that you will check out Order In. But even if our club is not the right fit for you, I really hope that everyone can find the support that they need in their day, to feel less alone and to have a good and wonderful, productive work day. And people are also always welcome to reach out to me personally. I'm JJ Caffey on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I'm always here and happy to chat.
That's great. So thank you for being on the show.
Thank you again.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Growth Zone with Christian Bartsch. Thank you for listening. Please leave a review or rating here on iTunes or on podchaser.com. If you found the content helpful, then share it on social media. I would like to invite you to follow our show so that you don't miss the upcoming interviews with leaders in the market. Simply visit the website follow.prmediareach.com. I will be adding the link also to the description of this episode so that you just need to click on that link. For those of you who are listening and signing up to follow the show, I have reserved a free copy of the Ultimate Guide on Content Marketing. This is the strategy that got me top corporate clients like McDonald's, Linde, Hewlett-Packard, Deutsche Bank, Volvo, and many others. That strategy has been working for over 10 years. It also got me contacts with police, transport authorities, military, and several universities, and even leading research institutes. For sure, it also worked wonders as it got me many small, medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises as clients. And that even included international clients from all around the world. The link to sign up for our free broadcasting service and the guide is follow.prmediareach.com. That will give you access to the most recent version of my ultimate guide on content marketing. You can follow me as well on Twitter by using the Twitter handle CAPBarge. That's spelled Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel. Yes, that is CAP Barge. Charlie, Alpha, Papa, Bravo, Alpha, Romeo, Tango, Sierra, Charlie, Hotel.